Hi, this is Kayla, and it is week 8, and I'm in group 4, and I'm going to look at the questions for group 4 for this week. I'm going to start with the individual question, and that was, using a relevant topic of interest, describe how a public meeting would be structured for each step in the ladder of citizen participation. How would people find out about the issue? How would they be allowed and encouraged to participate? And what power would they have to affect the issue? So the topic that I'm going to use is a language program for immigrants, and I'm going to start at the bottom of the ladder for this, and that would be manipulation. So at this stage, you're kind of going to be educating the immigrants and kind of engineering their support. They may not even be aware of the issue until this meeting takes place. They might not know what's going on. They haven't been informed up until now, and you're going to kind of tell them, this is what we think is the problem and this is what we're going to do. You're not necessarily, or you're really not asking for their input. You're not allowing them to kind of engage in that planning. They didn't have any say until now. They didn't really know what was going on, so they don't have really any power, and they haven't been encouraged or allowed to participate coming into this meeting, and really the meeting is not an opportunity for them to do that either. Moving into the next phase of that, which would be therapy, and you're kind of focusing on curing their pathology instead of working with them to overcome what caused it. So rather than approaching it in terms of what's kind of the obstacles that are causing language barriers, what's led to it, they don't really look at that. They kind of just say, maybe you're going to learn to speak English, or you're just going to continue to speak your own language. We're not going to bother to teach you to speak English. Not taking the time to figure out what the real problem is, not trying to dig deeper into the issue. They're, again, kind of telling them, this is what we're going to do, not really asking for their input. They're kind of trying to cure them of their language barrier without allowing them to participate in the issue of a language barrier. The next phase of that would be consultation, or informing. And with this, you've got a one-way flow of information, and there's no channel for feedback or power negotiation. So with this phase, with the immigrants, you'd be telling them, this is our program, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to involve you, and you're kind of giving them the information of what you're doing, and so they kind of get maybe the sense that, okay, you're engaging them by at least telling them what you're going to do, but you're still not allowing them to put in their input. You're not letting them play an active role. So again, they just don't have that power, and they're not being encouraged in any way. The next step then would be consultation. There's no assurance that their concerns or ideas will be taken into account. So you're consulting with them, asking them maybe at this meeting, what is it that you think? What needs to be done to overcome your language barrier? What obstacles are there? And you're asking them for that input so they feel like they're contributing, but when you get that information, you're not necessarily doing anything with it. You're not acting upon what they say. You're not taking their ideas into account. So when you're doing that, they feel like they have the power by giving you the ideas, but they really don't have any power if you're not going to do anything with those ideas. Moving into the next phase of that, placation, the participants are allowed to participate, but they're outnumbered. So maybe you form a committee, and the committee is going to decide how the program funds for the language program for the immigrants are going to be used. And you put immigrants on that committee. So you would think that because there's immigrants on the committee, that their decisions are going to be heard, they can voice their concerns, their ideas, and they'll have an active say in all of this. But really, if you put more members that are non-immigrants on the committee, when you vote, when you make these final decisions, they're going to be outnumbered. So they can give their ideas, but they have no chance to actually have their ideas be kind of the say-all, the in charge, the dominant force in there. So they really don't have a whole lot of power there. They can contribute, but not a lot of power. The next phase would be partnership. With the partnership, a negotiation, a joint effort. Here, maybe you would join forces with an immigrant group that already exists, that's already formed of immigrants, and you can together form a program for a language barrier, working together and negotiating through the process of how things are going to go. And then the highest level would be citizen control, and you let the immigrants govern the program. They would be in charge of the policies for the program, the hiring, the firing. They would be accountable for that program. They would kind of lead it. So maybe say, this is the grant that we've received, we're going to give it to you, we're going to let you use it how you'd like to use it, that you think would be most effective. And they kind of, in that phase, definitely, they have the power, they can make the change, and they can have their voices be heard. Moving into the Group 4 question, which is, according to Bond's actions for facilitating participation, how can we expand opportunities for meaningful participation towards sustainability? Is participation in sustainability efforts more or less important than in other social change work? So the ideas that he gives, Bond, in his reading, we need to share our resources, we need to acknowledge the inequalities in the power and resources and work to create an atmosphere that promotes open communication. We need to actively question and reevaluate participation and what it means in every situation. So understanding that just because we're allowing the participants to participate one way doesn't mean that they can't participate in another way later, that you need to evaluate that as you go. Maximizing mutual respect for what each party has to offer, involving them by observing them, involving them, and sharing your resources. Recognizing that there are differences in power, but trying to avoid that sense of a hierarchy. You want to acknowledge it because it's there, so you don't want to pretend like it's not, but you don't want it to be a hierarchy of you have all the power and they have no say. Engaging the community members in that process, that's really important, because you want them to be a part of the process. You are working to help them, you want social change, so they really need to be a part of that. And then also making sure that you're not objectifying people, that you're looking at the overall phenomenon and not the individual people. That when you're working with them, it can kind of be easy to look at that individual as you ask them questions or as you work with them, but understanding that it's really important not to objectify them, or they're not going to trust you, they're not going to be willing to participate. And so if you don't have their support, it's going to be really hard to have that impact that is really necessary as a researcher. And I do think that it's especially important in sustainable projects to engage in this, because if you're not, a project is not going to be successful if you don't really want the group that you are working for social change to actively play a role. If they're not a part of the solution's not going to continue. And so kind of the goal of a sustainable project is for it to continue, so you really want that active participation. So I think it is especially important to have that in a sustainable project. So that's all that I have this week for week 8, and I look forward to watching the moderator videos.